Welcome to the Live, Work, Play Maine podcast, where we bridge the divide between marketing and economic development, with your host, Hillary Dow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Live, Work, Play Maine podcast. I'm Hillary Dow, and I'm pleased to have with me today Jonathan LaBonte, the Executive Director of the Androscoggin Land Trust and the current mayor of my beloved city, Auburn. And we're going to talk a little bit about his past, the experiences that he brings to his position, and all of the amazing things that the Land Trust does, specifically around place-based activities and economic development. So welcome, Jonathan. Thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So how about if we jump right in with you sharing with us a little bit about your background and all of the varied experiences that you have from your career thus far that have brought you to this position with the Land Trust.
I'll give you the short version because it's been an interesting past. My bachelor's degree is in chemical engineering. I actually studied at Maine, thinking I was going to go into the pulp and paper industry. Left Orono, did some consulting work in Boston for a few years, and Maine kept tugging on me. And I found my way back to the University of Maine to study in the Master's in Public Administration program, added some more tools to the toolkit, if you will. Was able to find a position that allowed me to move back to Auburn a few years after that, doing transportation planning in public policy work. And after a few years of service on the board of the Land Trust, the board approached me to see whether I would take on the full-time position of executive director. And it's been 6 years as of this week.
Congratulations. So how have you tied all of that varied experience into your current position with the Land Trust?
You know, you mentioned, place-based work with the Androscoggin Land Trust, and place can be a physical location, whether it's in the woods or in a mill town like Lewiston, Auburn. But place is made by the people, and I've been very fortunate, starting with my undergraduate work in Orono, to spend a lot of time getting to know people and getting to know how people make communities and the work that takes place in those communities. So, one example, my background in pulp and paper, I have great relationships within the pulp and paper industry and with communities where those mills existed because I did work there. The Land Trust right now is working on a 1,300-acre acquisition in the towns of Jay and Canton that connects land and water trails into downtown Jay and downtown Livermore Falls as a partnership with Verso Paper. That project probably wouldn't be happening right now if an understanding of that community and its people wasn't already ingrained in me from years before and a different career before. So for me, the place-based work always starts with understanding the people in a community, how they connect, in this case, how they connect with the outdoors, and then trying to help.
Fantastic. So I follow your community engagements, and I'm dabble in that myself. So I'm familiar with the economic development efforts that are currently going on here. So you being more tied into it than I, can you share with us some of the things that you think Maine is doing well? We have such a tremendous quality of place, and how are we capitalizing on incorporating place-based economic development into our efforts?
Maine was a leader in the case of the Land Trust movement. Maine was a national leader as land trusts were first coming to be about a generation ago, about 30 years ago. So all this work around protecting place, view corridors, trails, important ecological areas, wildlife habitat for important things like hunting and fishing. Land trusts have quickly transitioned, or are quickly transitioning, into understanding how their work as a nonprofit is helping communities position themselves to attract visitors if you're tourism-based, attract workers and people if that's a key part of your economic development strategy. So, Maine's fortunate to have had nonprofits. I mentioned Land Trust, but so many nonprofits, arts, cultural, or otherwise, that are doing really good work with limited capacity. It's the passion of volunteers about their community that I think is a really defining characteristic of how Maine's going to be successful, because there, as you know, there isn't enough money to go around to do all the great things we want to do, but many hands can make light work, and Maine's blessed to have a lot of people from north to south, east to west that want to get their hands dirty.
So if you're located in an area that doesn't have its own organized land trust already, is it typical that a landowner or a town may reach out to one of a neighboring community's land trust to kind of tap into their organization?
That's a lot of what's happened. There really hasn't been a move to create a new land trust in Maine in a while, in part because where communities have been interested or landowners have been interested, they've tapped into the network of land trust to think about what organization can bring the most expertise or the right expertise to an area. When our organization, the Androscoggin Land Trust, was founded, our incorporating document said we'll work in Androscoggin County. Well, in 1998, there was interest in Jay and Canton to conserve land along the river, and we were approached as a group that could play that role, and we did. So even our territory was arbitrarily defined as Androscoggin County, but based on demand and need and opportunity, we're still within the Androscoggin watershed, but we've spread out into all or part of 4 counties now.
Okay, fantastic. That kind of gets me into the next topic that I wanted to spend some time on. And so, as I call you guys, ALT, you've been doing great work drawing national attention to the whole Androscoggin watershed. So let's talk a little bit about how when you do have a tremendous natural resource asset like the Androscoggin River and the watershed, how you can access national resources and build that back into local economic development efforts.
Yeah, I was talking with some folks from the East Coast Greenway, their New England coordinator, who was up earlier this week to talk about an event to continue putting the trails along the Androscoggin on the map for an event this summer. She was talking about some national heritage areas in Massachusetts, and they're designated nationally because they were the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. And my quick comment about our community here on the Androscoggin is that the Androscoggin is the birthplace of the modern environmental movement. Senator Muskie, the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, his vision for what communities could be around this asset of the river really began with him growing up in Rumford and studying at Bates College here in Lewiston. So we've really pushed that message that this is a river that opened the door for so many other communities nationally to reclaim their natural resources. We still have a great challenge here, and certainly living here, Hillary, that there's still a stigma among many that now this river, as I look out my window, is too dirty to use, too dirty to enjoy. And the only way we change their minds is to get people outside, whether it's young professionals with paddling events, river cleanups. And one of the things we've done that has drawn attention is our work with the immigrant community. Tree Street Youth, a great youth program in downtown Lewiston, serving predominantly Somali immigrant families and their children. They don't understand what the river was before because they've only known it since they've moved here over the last decade. And they love nothing more than coming down and learning how to fish and cast a rod, or getting out there and trying to paddle a canoe for the first time. So our ability to reach out to at-risk youth or immigrant youth, for us, they're just people who live here. But nationally, communities are struggling with how they overcome barriers to access to the outdoors. So, depending on who we're talking to, if the environmental heritage message sells, we'll use it. If it's about connecting at-risk youth or immigrant youth, we'll use it. But there's a lot of neat things happening here that aren't happening elsewhere right now.
Awesome. So just a plug, can you talk a little bit about the tremendous bass fishing that we have in this area?
Yeah, it was actually about 15 years ago, Field and Stream magazine highlighted the Androscoggin as one of the best bass fisheries north and east of Missouri. So they're saying, hey, this is a place to be. I always reference Macaulay Lord, really salt of the earth guy, lives in Brunswick. Great fisherman. He actually was the starter of L.L. Bean's Outdoor Discovery School fishing programs. He wrote L.L. Bean's book on fly fishing. And he saw our work that we were doing up here trying to reconnect people, and he said, tell you what, I'll take your mayor's fishing. I wasn't mayor at the time. Actually, that was the day I decided to run. That's a different story. So we had the mayors of Lewiston and Auburn sitting with him, getting their gear ready to go out, and the Sun Journal, the local newspaper, was standing there, and he said, you know what? If I could take someone anywhere in Maine fishing for the first time, I'd take them to the riverfront in Lewiston, Auburn. And one, it's a great soundbite. I use it in all my presentations now. But the reality was this riverfront is easily accessible. You're off major corridors. You're in a downtown. You can walk right down to the shore, and there's a ton of fish. So even if you're a beginning fisherman, you're going to have luck. You're going to have success here. So there's great bass fishing tournaments, but during the summer, there's nothing greater than seeing a kid who lives in town just grab his fishing pole, and it doesn't matter whether he's a rich kid or a kid from a challenged family. At the end of the day, he's just down there enjoying a summer day fishing, which is awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. Hopefully they'll have, I have to brag, the same luck that I had. Biggest adrenaline rush of my life, catching a bass that was literally, I'm off the screen. It was so big. So yeah, it's just awesome, the work that you guys are doing to introduce the youth in the community to accessing the river, whether it's paddling or fishing or all of those outdoor activities. It's just awesome.
And then the beauty, our work as a land trust is literally forever. When we conserve a piece of land, we take on a forever responsibility. So for us, investing in youth isn't just a sort of flash in the pan, let's do a fishing program. These kids growing up here, if they grow to love this place, they become the future stewards of this place. And no better way to create a future steward than to have them enjoy it now.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the trail work, because one of the best ways to have people access the river is to have robust trail systems. In different communities across Maine, there are different levels of trail networks. So let's talk a little bit about the work that's going on here locally, but how hopefully over time it ties into these other trail networks.
Yeah. Well, we're fortunate the Land Trust was able to merge with another nonprofit a handful of years ago. LA Trails was a standalone nonprofit advocating for non-motorized trail development and stewardship in Lewiston, Auburn. And we came together. So under LA Trails, so trails throughout Lewiston, Auburn, we already have, I think, almost three dozen miles of trails throughout Lewiston, Auburn. The Land Trust is really focusing, especially from an economic development support perspective with those cities. How do we connect the existing trails and parks along the river and create a very robust system up and down the river? 5 years ago, we created the new Androscoggin Riverland State Park just across the Auburn line in Turner, 2,600 acres, over 10 miles of undeveloped riverfront, 20 miles of trails just in that park. Imagine a day when someone on an afternoon in the summer could hop on a mountain bike, head up the river, and be in an amazing state park. So there's a focus around building places for people to get outdoors, starting where people already are, near the Bates Mill where 3,000 people are working, or in neighborhoods is really the foundation, and then we start connecting up from there.
Yeah, I applaud that work, because I'm a huge fan of all the different the boat launches and the different access points for the river, but those that are close to downtown and all of our extremely busy lives, it just makes having that environment here to enjoy that much more accessible and enjoyable. So keep up that good work.
We will.
All right, so let's say we're sitting here 20 years from now, having a conversation. Hopefully we will be. At that point, what are the achievements you're most proud of, or that ALT is most proud of? And let's do both, you and the Land Trust.
Well, certainly I think one of the things we could be most proud of is actually having that robust trail system that we just finished a plan with both cities and local stakeholders to connect that state park through our downtown and heading towards Lisbon and Brunswick, the southern end being part of the East Coast Greenway. That being built, that being something that attracts tens of thousands of people or more a year, having that system being well stewarded, not well taken care of, not necessarily by staff at the Land Trust, but by community members and local businesses that really believe that it's a community asset. I think that in of itself would be a major accomplishment, because nothing makes us prouder than to know that we can help to create the trails and support that, but that local people, local businesses are taking ownership. They believe it's part of what makes having their business in town or working downtown or living downtown or in this community a part of that. So, building more stuff is an important piece, but the culture of a community growing to embrace that those things exist and how important they are. We can look back 20 years from now and say this community not only embraced the river and recreational access, but came to believe it. They had a responsibility to share in taking care of that. This place will be very different in a very positive way.
Yeah, that would just be awesome. So is that your own personal hope for 20 years from now?
I think it's both. I mean, certainly, I love this work. I wouldn't be doing this work otherwise. But of course, it's my hometown. It's where I grew up. And I remember growing up in town New Auburn in an apartment where in the spring you would shut the windows because the smell was awful, and while the view was great, looking over the mills in the falls, you didn't want to go near it. To see this continued evolution of a community, and certainly with the land trust work, I can share that experience with other people. I can sit down in Lewiston Falls or in Livermore Falls and talk with a community member who has the same hopes and aspirations for their community, and certainly being mayor of my hometown doesn't keep me with the land trust work from helping other towns realize their visions too.
Yeah, and I am part of the group of local citizens trying to make a difference that did not grow up here. So I don't have those preconceived notions. And I think one of the biggest benefits of recruiting people to any urban center that has such tremendous natural resources is that it doesn't matter what happened 50, 100 years ago, because it's all just great now and will be even greater going forward. So I'll help you as best I can over the next 20 years, make that all happen.
You're welcome.
Okay. So my final question of every show is, what is your favorite thing about living, working, and or playing in Maine?
We're getting close to that time, and I go to Portland quite a bit, so I'll tell this through a story. I go to Portland quite a bit. It's not that far away from Lewiston, Auburn. It's the same distance both ways. And I can remember once last year at a pub at happy hour, met some friends down there, and struck up a conversation with people, and they asked, where do you live? And I tell them Lewiston, Auburn, and I got that look. Lewiston, Auburn. And I said, you know what? I own a brick home downtown on one block from the Androscoggin River, and in the summer I carry my kayak one block, I paddle upstream, and I park my kayak under the Gritty's Brew Pub deck and go to work upstairs. If that doesn't define quality of place, a unique opportunity, and their jaws always drop, and I tell that story a lot now because it's true. It is awesome to live in my old neighborhood, carry my kayak a block, and paddle to work in the summer. And not many people have the opportunity to do that anywhere in the country, and there are so many communities in Maine where that is literally a way people could commute to work and enjoy living in their community, and I hope more people start doing it.
I have to share with you that of the interviews that I've done so far, you're now the second person that ties commute into your favorite thing, because our commutes are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I absolutely love it when you show up in a meeting with your bow tie on and your kayak over your shoulder looking for a spot to put it.
It never hurts.
Yeah, so keep up the great work, and thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that this information is helpful for other communities that, especially so many in Maine and rural states across the nation that have great natural resources that they can and should be using as assets for economic development. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a great day, Hillary.
Thanks.